On my sister's birthday, my parents demanded I buy her a BMW with my trust. When I refused, everything turned ugly, and I ended up in the ER, pressured to sign a document. Hours later, a man in a suit opened his briefcase, and one line on that paper killed the laughter instantly. The ER lights were too bright for a Tuesday in November. That was my first coherent thought after the triage nurse pressed a gauze pad to my split lip. Not how did I get here, not what happens now, but a strange, detached observation about fluorescent bulbs and the way they made everything look sharp and unforgiving. The white tile, the thin paper sheet crinkling under my legs, the plastic cup of water that tasted faintly like city pipes and cheap regret. My phone lay face up on the exam table beside my thigh, its screen spiderwebbed from where it had skittered across bathroom tile an hour earlier. Every buzz sent a jolt through my palm. Through the narrow glass window in the exam room door, I could see my parents in the waiting area, pacing, checking their phones, my mother performing the wide-eyed concern she reserved for public audiences. My father stood with his arms crossed, jaw set, radiating the low-grade fury of a man who had not yet gotten what he wanted. And my sister Cassidy sat near the vending machine, still wearing her pink birthday sash like a victory ribbon. She was 20 today. I was 22 with a bruised jaw and a cracked phone, wearing the same hoodie I'd had on when I tried to walk out of my own house. My phone buzzed again. One message, 3 lines. Lawrence Patton, got your message. I'm on my way. Do not sign anything. Do not speak to anyone alone. Relief hit me so hard it almost felt like a second injury. I pressed my hand flat against the exam table and tried to breathe through it. The shaking, the nausea, the bizarre, terrible gratitude of someone who has just realized they are not completely alone. 2 hours ago, I had been on a bathroom floor, locked behind a hollow door that my father's fist had already dented twice, typing with fingers that wouldn't stop trembling. Emergency. Parents trying to force me to use my trust fund. It got physical. I'm at County ER off I-70. Please. Even now, reading his reply, part of me still couldn't fully believe anyone was coming. When you grow up as the other child, the quiet one, the placeholder, the one who gets "we'll discuss your thing later" every single time, you stop expecting rescue. Adults tell you to be the bigger person, to stop provoking, to keep the peace. My grandmother never told me to keep the peace. She told me to keep myself. That promise was the only reason I was still upright. The morning everything, was already wrong. Cassidy woke the whole house at 7 a.m. sharp, shrieking, laughing, blasting music loud enough to rattle the frames in the hallway. I lay in bed for 4 minutes listening to her stomp down the stairs, heard my mother's delighted laugh rise to meet her, and felt the familiar weight of a day that had already decided not to include me. Happy birthday to me! I turned back to my laptop. I had a discussion post due at noon for my online psychology course, and my professor had zero patience for the phrase family emergency. At 22, I had perfected the art of staying quiet, staying useful, and staying out of the line of fire. Cassidy's birthdays were the exception to every survival strategy I'd ever developed. She had been talking about this one for months, ever since our parents decided that turning 20 meant she was grown enough for the things she'd wanted since she was 16. A BMW, not just any BMW. The 330i, she'd told anyone within earshot, including the cashier at Target and our mail carrier. Alpine white, black interior, M Sport package. It's literally my vibe. My father would grunt approvingly. My mother would smile like Cassidy's entitlement was a charming personality trait. And I would watch from the edge of every room, saying nothing, because I already knew where the money was supposed to come from. Mine. My grandmother, Evelyn Taylor, my dad's mother, died when I was 18. She was blunt and sharp and impossible to guilt trip, and she had a gift for seeing through my parents like they were made of cheap glass. At her funeral, my mother sobbed loud enough for the whole church to hear. My father stared straight ahead. Cassidy wore a black dress that looked like it came from a music video. I stood near the casket and felt a hole open inside me that no church service was going to fill. 2 weeks later, Lawrence Patton called. He was my grandmother's attorney, 70-something, crisp suits, careful with his words in the precise way of someone who understands how much damage a single careless sentence can do. He told me, in the measured tone of a man reading from a prepared document, that my grandmother had left me a trust, $200,000, accessible when I turned 21, to be used, and only used, mine for education, housing, healthcare, and building my future. Investments, certifications, a security deposit on an apartment, anything that moved my life forward. Only you can authorize distributions, he said, and only for purposes that fit the trust's terms. Even then, at 18, my stomach tightened. My parents, Lawrence paused, the kind of deliberate pause that means someone has been waiting for a specific sentence. Your grandmother anticipated pressure, he said. That's why she structured it this way. She wanted you protected. No one had ever used that word about me. A month before my 21st birthday, a letter arrived, forwarded from Lawrence's office, in my grandmother's handwriting, on paper that smelled faintly of the cedar closet in her bedroom. Letty, it said, they will come for what's yours. They always do. Do not let them talk you into sacrificing your future for their comfort. If you ever feel cornered, call Lawrence. Promise me you'll call. I pressed that letter to my chest and whispered, I promise, into the empty room. I didn't know then that I was rehearsing. By late morning, the house smelled like vanilla candles and a kind of manufactured warmth my mother deployed whenever she needed something to look nice on the surface. Cassidy was in the kitchen with a tiara on her head, filming herself for Instagram. My father sat at the table with a stack of papers he wasn't bothering to hide. At noon, my mother walked into my room without knocking. "Family meeting," she announced. "Downstairs. Now." "I'm in class," I said. "You're on a computer," she said. "That's not class." The living room felt staged. My father in his recliner, arms crossed. Cassidy perched on the sofa in her birthday sash. My mother standing slightly behind my father's shoulder, hands folded, the picture of unified parental authority. On the coffee table sat a glossy folder with a dealership logo I recognized from a billboard on Highway 40. My father pointed at the armchair across from them. "Sit." I stayed standing by the doorway. My mother's smile tightened. "Don't be dramatic." "What is this?" I asked. Cassidy bounced, literally bounced, on the sofa cushion. "It's happening," she breathed. "I'm finally getting my BMW." My father leaned forward and slid a buyer's order across the coffee table like he was dealing cards. The number at the top was printed in a bold, unbothered font. Vehicle total, $48,200. Below that, a line for a down payment. Below that, a space labeled financing method. Cash. Trust disbursement. They had already filled it in. My pulse beat in my ears. "We thought you could just write a check," Cassidy said brightly. "You have that trust thing. Grandma's money. It's not like you earned it." The sentence landed like a slap that uses open palm and smiles at the same time. "My trust is restricted," I said carefully. "It's for my education, my living expenses, healthcare, for your future," my mother interrupted, nodding along like she was agreeing with me and not dismantling the argument. "Exactly. And your future includes this family. Your sister is family." My father's voice went flat. "You will purchase the BMW. Today." I waited genuinely for someone to laugh. No one did. "The trust doesn't allow this," I said. "Lawrence Patton manages the distributions. He approves them. It has to be for me, my schooling, my living." "Lawrence Patton is a leech your grandmother hired because she didn't trust us," my mother said. "She didn't," I said before I could stop myself. The silence that followed felt like a door slamming. Cassidy's mouth dropped open. My father stood slowly, the leather of his recliner making a sound like a warning. My mother's smile vanished as cleanly as a light being switched off. "You ungrateful little," my father started. "I'm not buying her a BMW," I said, louder now, because my fear was tipping over into something steadier, something that felt almost like anger, but cleaner. $48,000 is not a family gift. It's my education. It's my way out. Cassidy's eyes filled on command, an impressive trick, like turning on a faucet. "You're ruining my birthday," she wailed. "You've always been jealous of me. This is literally jealousy." My mother wrapped an arm around her. "Do you see what you're doing?" she hissed at me. "Do you understand how cruel you are?" My father took one step toward me. I backed up, reflexively, the way you do when your body has been keeping a separate tally from your brain for years. "You will call Patton," my mother told my father. "Make him authorize it." "I already tried," my father said, jaw clenched. "That man won't return my calls." "Because he's doing his job," I said. My father's gaze shifted to me like a weather system changing direction. "You think you can walk away after everything we've done for you?" There it was, the invoice, the implied debt I had never agreed to carry. I took one breath. Then I said, "I'm leaving." "Then you're not family," my father said. "Walk out that door without agreeing and don't bother coming back." I looked at Cassidy, pink sash, tiara, tears in perfectly spaced streaks. I looked at my mother, already building the story she would tell at church. I looked at my father, hands flexing at his sides, and something inside me clicked, settled. "Then I guess I'm not family," I said. The sentence came out calm. It did not feel calm. It felt like stepping off a cliff and finding the fall was longer than you thought. I turned and walked down the hallway. I made it 3 steps before I heard my father's boots behind me. "Here is something you learn growing up in a house like mine. You measure danger by sound." His voice meant anger. His silence meant worse. His boots on hardwood meant he had decided that the conversation was over, and the physical world was the next available option. He grabbed my arm, hard. The pressure lit up my nerves, bright and immediate. "Don't," I said. He yanked me backward. "Let go of me," I said, and my voice cracked on the last word. My mother's voice cut in behind him, sharp and clear. "Just agree, Letitia. Stop being selfish. Your sister needs it." Needs. A word they only used when it was useful to them. I twisted, trying to free my arm. My father shoved me sideways into the wall. A framed family portrait, one of those staged JCPenney ones where we all wore matching blue, tilted and crashed to the floor. Glass scattered across the hardwood like sharp little truths finally exposed. Cassidy screamed. My mother did not scream at him. She screamed at me. "Look what you're making him do!" That sentence hit harder than the wall. I pushed at his chest, slipped past, took the stairs 2 at a time. Behind me, I heard my father's voice rise. My mother's follow-up almost cheerful. "Letitia, don't be dramatic. We can talk about this." I made it to my room and slammed the door so hard the latch rattled. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone. My thumb found Lawrence's number. I hit call. It rang once, twice. My father's boots hit the bottom of the stairs. Panic surged through me like cold water. I ended the call before anyone answered. "Coward," said one part of my brain. "Survivor," said another. I ran into my bathroom and locked that door too, as if a flimsy lock had ever stopped a lifetime of entitlement. I sank to the tile, knees pulled to my chest, and typed with fingers that would not stop shaking. "Lawrence Patton, emergency. Parents trying to force me to buy a car with my trust. It got physical. I need help." I hit send as my father slammed into the bedroom door hard enough to crack the frame. My grandmother's voice played in my head like a warning bell. They will come for what's yours. The lock on the bathroom door failed 40 seconds later. I don't remember every detail after that. Shock cuts memory like scissors on film. I remember the world tilting. I remember my phone skittering across the tile, the screen fracturing further. I remember curling inward, trying to make less of myself available to be grabbed. I remember my mother's voice from somewhere above me. You did this to yourself. I remember Cassidy crying in the hallway. Not for me, not really for anyone, but because her birthday had been inconvenienced. It took me a long time to sit up. Every movement sent nausea rolling through me. My phone was near the baseboard, cracked almost beyond recognition. The screen still lit. Lawrence Patton, I'm coming. If you can get safe, go to the ER. I'm contacting police. Someone believed me. I grabbed my purse, my keys, and one thought, leave. Driving wasn't smart, but staying was worse. The November air outside felt like a slap I was grateful to receive. I dropped my keys once before I got them into the ignition. The dashboard clock read 2:17 p.m. I backed out of the driveway with the shattered family portrait still lying in the hallway, and I drove toward highway signs like they were instructions from a universe that had finally decided to help. I made it to County ER by 2:44 p.m. Triage was fast. Name, date of birth, emergency contact, that last one. My whole life I'd been trained to say my parents' names, their number, their address. Lawrence Patton, I said. The nurse blinked. Relationship? My trust attorney. She wrote it down without laughing. That was the first moment all day I felt like I was steering my own life. My parents arrived 20 minutes later. Of course they did. They always showed up when there was an audience. My mother rushed to the desk with her voice pitched for the waiting room. That's my daughter. She's clumsy. Always has been. She fell. My father stood behind her, arms crossed, wearing the irritated expression of a man who has been inconvenienced by his own actions. Cassidy hovered at their side in her birthday sash, eyes red and dramatically wide. The nurse with the kind eyes and the graying ponytail came back into my exam room and rested a hand lightly on my shoulder. Sweetheart, she said, I need to ask you something. This doesn't look like a stumble. I looked at the cracked phone on the table. Honey, her voice was soft. Do you feel safe going home? Through the glass, my mother saw me looking and arranged her face into practiced concern. She lifted one hand in a small wave, the same wave she used after church to signal what a good mother she was. The look in her eyes was not concern. It was calculation. No, I whispered. The word felt like stepping into sunlight after years in a basement. The nurse nodded once, tapped notes into her tablet, touched my shoulder again before she left, and then I sat there, listening to the hum of the vending machines and the distant cry of a toddler somewhere down the hall, and I waited. An hour later, the exam room door opened. Lawrence Patton walked in like the world had finally remembered I deserved backup. He was in a charcoal suit despite the November cold, silver hair neatly combed, face carrying the lines of a man who had spent decades saying no to people who despised hearing it. His assistant followed with a leather briefcase that was heavier than it looked. I would learn why shortly. Letitia, he said. His voice was steady. That steadiness cost him nothing. It gave me everything. He crossed the room and without asking, placed himself between me and the exam room window, like a shield. I'm here, he said. My throat tightened beyond speech. I managed, thank you. He looked at my jaw, my swollen eye, the hospital bracelet on my wrist, and his expression did not crumple into pity. It sharpened into something more useful than pity. He turned to the nurse. Has the hospital documented everything? Yes. Photos for the medical record. Doctor's notes. I need copies of everything, Lawrence said. Photos, the attending's full report, and a written timeline from triage. He turned back to me, and his voice softened by exactly 1 degree. Did they try to make you sign anything? No, I said. They tried to make me agree. Lawrence's jaw tightened. Then he set the briefcase on the chair beside him and opened it. The first document had an embossed court seal that caught the harsh ER light. Temporary protection order, emergency petition. My hands trembled as I read. Effective immediately, Lawrence said, his voice even. It bars your parents from contacting you, approaching you, or interfering with your finances. It covers anyone acting as their messenger. How did you get this so fast? I whispered. Emergency judge, emergency hearing. He paused. And your grandmother was persuasive, even in death. He pulled out the second document. Notice to financial institutions, he said. Your bank, your school accounts, any account bearing your name. We're removing your parents from all contact lists, blocking any unauthorized access attempts. You are an adult. They have no legal standing. Third document. Notice of protective filing, Lawrence said. This creates a documented record of the coercion attempt. If they pursue the trust in any other forum, civil court, family court, anywhere, this is already on record. Behind the glass, my mother was pacing. My father held the papers an officer had just handed him. His head came up slowly. His eyes found mine through the window. He had expected a lot of things today. This had not been one of them. He looked afraid. For the first time in my life, the people who had made me feel small looked very, very mortal. Lawrence watched my father's face go pale and said quietly, as if he were stating a simple fact, "This is the moment they realize you are not their bank account." Officer Jennifer Walsh introduced herself as a detective. 12 years in family violence cases. Calm eyes. The kind of stillness that makes you feel like your words are landing somewhere solid. "Miss Taylor," she said, "I'd like to hear it in your words." I looked at Lawrence. He nodded once. I looked at the cracked phone on the table, and I told the truth. I told them about the BMW, about the buyer's order already filled in on the coffee table, about $48,000 printed in a bold, unbothered font, about my father's grip on my arm, the wall, the glass from the family portrait on on the hardwood floor. My mother's voice behind him, "Look what you're making him do," narrating my pain like I was the author of it. I told them about the bathroom door, the lock, the way my phone hit the tile. I didn't use dramatic language. I didn't have to. When I finished, Detective Walsh looked at her notepad, then at me, then at Lawrence. "This is not a family misunderstanding," she said. "This is intimidation and physical harm tied to coercion of a financial asset." I looked at Lawrence. He leaned slightly forward. "She would also like to press charges," he said. "Yes," I said. "I do." That sentence felt like breaking a generational curse with my bare hands. Through the window, I watched another officer approach my parents with a second set of documents. My mother's face brightened. She actually smiled, thinking help had arrived. Then she read the first line. Her smile froze. Then it died. My father grabbed the papers from her, scanned them once, then again, slower. His jaw slackened. His hands tightened. He looked toward the exam room window. Cassidy leaned in, tiara tilted, trying to read over his shoulder. And I watched something I had waited 22 years to see. The realization, spreading across my father's face like cold water, that there was a system in this world that was not arranged in his favor. Lawrence arranged everything with the efficiency of someone who had been preparing for exactly this situation. A temporary apartment, small, furnished, 20 minutes from my parents' house, but in a different zip code. A side exit from the hospital so I didn't have to pass them in the waiting room. A police escort to my car. In the parking lot, the cold air hit my lungs like something clean. That night, I lay in a stranger's bed in a quiet apartment and stared at the ceiling while my phone buzzed with messages from relatives, from Cassidy, from numbers I didn't recognize. The text from my Aunt Teresa said, "Your mother is devastated. A cousin. Please just talk to them." An unknown number. "Family doesn't do this." And then Cassidy. "I know you probably hate me. I'm sorry. I didn't know Dad would go that far." I stared at that message until the letters blurred. Cassidy had been sorry my entire life. Sorry when my mother forgot my birthday but threw hers with a rented venue and a photo booth. Sorry when my father yelled at me for talking back but laughed when she rolled her eyes. Sorry when my grandmother gave me a necklace and my mother called it manipulation. Sorry, but never sorry enough to stop benefiting. I turned the phone face down. The spiderweb of cracks caught the lamplight like a warning. This is what it costs to say no. 3 days later, a man named Vincent Russo called. He introduced himself smoothly, the way men who get paid to be smooth always do. He represented James and Patricia Taylor. He wanted to discuss, he said, a resolution. His clients deeply regretted this unfortunate situation. Emotions had been high. Lawrence had his phone on speaker before Russo finished his second sentence. "Your clients attempted to coerce a protected financial asset and crossed a criminal line," Lawrence said. "There will be no negotiation." A pause on the other end. "I didn't realize you were involved in this matter," Russo said. "Now you do," Lawrence replied. "Advise your clients to comply with the court order and communicate only through counsel." He ended the call. "They're scared," I said. Lawrence looked at me. "Good," he said. "Fear is sometimes the first teacher consequences ever give." 2 weeks later, the district attorney filed charges. My father, assault. My mother, conspiracy and intimidation. Arraignment was scheduled. Near the end of that first year, Russo called again. Tired this time, the smoothness worn down to something blunter. The DA had offered a deal. My father, 6 months county jail. My mother, probation and mandatory anger management. The protection order extended to 5 years. If I insisted on trial, the state would pursue harsher penalties. I sat on my couch in Boulder. I had transferred by then. University of Colorado, wide skies, distance, and thought about what my therapist, Dr. Kim, had told me. Justice and healing aren't always the same road. "What do you need?" Lawrence asked. I looked at the cracked phone on my coffee table. "I need them to say it," I said. Out loud, on the record, no excuses. Lawrence's voice softened. "We can make that a condition." So I agreed. Not because they deserved mercy, because I deserved peace. The plea hearing was a Thursday. I watched via video feed from a conference room on campus, hands cold despite the heater. My parents stood before the judge looking smaller than I'd ever seen them. My father read from a prepared statement, his voice stiff and mechanical. "On November 13th, I used physical force against my adult daughter after she refused to use her inheritance to purchase a vehicle for my younger daughter. My actions caused injuries requiring medical treatment. I accept responsibility." It wasn't remorse, but it was truth. My mother followed, voice shaking. "I participated in pressuring my daughter. I did not protect her. I accept responsibility." The judge's voice was firm. "Parents are supposed to protect, not intimidate and harm for financial gain. These pleas are accepted under the conditions outlined. Mr. Taylor will report to county jail immediately." My father's shoulders slumped. I pressed my palm flat against my sternum. Something inside me loosened. Not forgiveness. Release. Boulder became home in a way no place ever had. The mountains in the distance were almost offensive in their beauty, like the world showing off. I joined a support group, found a therapist who specialized in family trauma, and slowly learned the language for things I had never been allowed to name: favoritism, coercion, scapegoating, guilt as a control mechanism. Dr. Kim was gentle but precise. "You were trained to believe your boundaries were cruelty," she said once. "Because that's what they told me," I said. "And now?" I looked at the carpet. "Now I'm learning that boundaries are survival." She nodded like that was the most important sentence I had said. I graduated early, threw myself into a master's program in clinical psychology, researched family trauma and recovery, partly because I wanted to understand what had happened, and partly because I wanted to turn my pain into something someone else could use. The trust dwindled slowly, exactly as as my grandmother had intended, not as a stash, as a bridge. Lawrence stayed in my life like a steady lighthouse, handling distributions and checking in with the quiet regularity of someone who had made a promise to a dying woman and intended to keep it. At 30, I opened a small therapy practice. The waiting room had a plant I somehow kept alive. The walls were a calm neutral that made people exhale when they walked in. In my office, I hung my grandmother's photograph, Evelyn Taylor smiling like she'd just overheard someone being ridiculous and couldn't wait to correct them. In the bottom drawer of my desk, I kept the cracked phone. On the 10th anniversary of that Tuesday in November, I took a walk through the park near my office. My phone rang. Unknown number. My body did the old thing. Tighten, brace, prepare. Then I inhaled slowly and answered. Letitia, Cassidy's voice, older now, worn around the edges. "Please don't hang up," she said quickly. "I know I have no right to call. I need to say something." I stood still, watching a child kick leaves into the air. "Say it," I said. She exhaled shakily. "I'm sorry. Not the sorry I used to say when I still expected you to fix it. The real one. I've been in therapy for years." A pause. "I didn't protect you," she said. "I watched them do it. I benefited. And I told myself it wasn't that bad because admitting it was that bad would mean I was part of it." My throat tightened. "Why now?" I asked. "Mom had a stroke last month," she said. "Not fatal, but it scared me. And I realized I've spent my whole life chasing approval from people who only love me when I'm useful." Her voice cracked. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just need you to know I see it. I see what I did." We talked for an hour, not about rebuilding, just two women comparing the ways they had survived the same house. When we hung up, I didn't feel the urge to rush toward anything. No dramatic reunion, no tearful promise, just a strange, calm acceptance. Maybe Cassidy and I would build something new. Maybe we wouldn't. Either way, I was okay, because I had learned the thing my parents never wanted me to learn. I didn't need their permission to be whole.